Trump is trying to change the way that we sort of do business in America. He is making not just the political left of the Democrats, but all the people who have gotten comfortably used to living off and profiting off of our system nervous. I mean, there's no other explanation for how a politician making $150,000 a year can finish their careers and they've got $30 million. Because what kind of American dream is it where only one segment of the population gets to cheer loudly and break out the champagne every time they open up their returns, and everybody else is struggling even on two incomes to make ends meet and watching the value of their money go down and down? It's appalling, really. So I think Trump's idea is, listen, I have to deliver for these people.
He's always been ahead of the curve on the big issues facing our country. Dinesh D'Souza is a best-selling author, filmmaker, and host of the hit Dinesh D'Souza podcast. He's also a true watchman on the wall for our country, and he joins us now in studio. Dinesh, always great to see you, my friend.
It's a real pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and you and I were talking off camera that every day we wake up and it's, hey, what did President Trump do today? It's been a glorious few months since he took office once again. The agenda is being pushed through at breakneck speed, it seems, Dinesh. What do you see as the greatest potential obstacles to President Trump's agenda? Is it the threat of violence? Is it these runaway rogue leftist judges? How do you see it?
I think that Trump is trying to change the way that we sort of do business in America. Yeah. He's taking things that were established for decades, perhaps even a century, and he's turning assumptions into questions. So, for example, I was a young policy analyst in the Reagan White House at the very end of Reagan's term. We were told, as when I came into government, that you have political appointees and you have career bureaucrats. Yeah. And the career bureaucrats are like professors. They have tenure. There's nothing you can do about them. You can change out the political appointees, but you have this permanent class of administrators kind of ruling the administrative state.
The swamp, the deep
And
state.
Nobody questioned it, even under Reagan. Now Trump comes along and he goes, sort of, where does it say? He suddenly says, aren't they part of the executive branch? And if so, don't they come under the purview of the president? So Trump is truly rocking the boat in the literal sense of the term. And as a result, he is making not just the political left or the Democrats, but all the people who have gotten comfortably used to living off and profiting off of our system nervous. So all those people are his secret or not so secret opponents. And they're all wishing that he fails, and they're all working in their own way to subvert him. And so he's up against a very powerful force. It's really the force of inertia.
Yeah, he's literally draining the swamp in real time, it seems. Those judges, those left-wing activist district judges, more to local level, but they're blocking national legislation that President Trump is putting forth. What can be done about them? Can anything be done to kind of blunt their effect?
So here's an interesting question. Where does a federal judge get the authority to make a nationwide injunction, right? It would seem that there's got to be some law, some statute that gives the judges this power. As it turns out, there is no such law. And then you think, well, there must be some provision in the Constitution, but you can read the Constitution and you won't find it in there. And then you think, well, there's got to be some Supreme Court case, some landmark case, maybe decades old, that said that a judge has every authority. And it turns out there isn't one of those either. So in other words, you've got an admittedly established practice with absolutely no warrant for it. And yet it exists only because it has existed that way before. And Trump is basically saying, really, it can't be this way. And he's dramatizing that it can't be this way because when you have 600 judges, and let's assume roughly half are on the other side politically, they could stop every single thing he did for his entire 4-year term.
Yeah.
Right? So Trump is essentially saying, is this the system that we have gotten from the founders? Is this what it amounts to? Now, I think the Supreme Court is going to realize it can't allow this.
Yeah. This can't go on.
Right. So I think what's going to happen is Trump has been tempted to ignore the judges. I don't think he should do that.
Okay.
Because in the event that the Republicans lost the House in the midterms, the Democrats would be given an easy grounds to impeach him a third time. You'd have the same rigmarole. So what Trump is better off doing, I think, is accelerated appeals through the process to the Supreme Court. And I think the Supreme Court is going to have to come in and say, listen, there's a limit to how much of this kind of block and tackle these judges can do. Otherwise, we don't really have, I won't say we don't have a country, but we don't have an effective government.
Yeah, something's got to give, Dinesh. And it's amazing. You laid it out. President Trump, he's smashing paradigms left and right, whether it's in this country, whether it's with Gaza, say, whether it's Russia, Ukraine. He kind of comes in, he analyzes the situation and says, why are we doing it that way? A lot of it is just plain common sense. One way to block that, of course, are these left-wing judges we mentioned, but also the threat of violence, one of the left's favorite tactics. We see Tesla dealerships and cars attacked. We see riots, obviously, especially on college campuses. We see swatting. How concerned are you when these 4 years continue, as these 4 years continue to proceed, that the left, unhinged as they are, will increasingly turn to violence?
I think the left saw that violence paid off for them during the BLM riots. They got away with it. They got a lot of money out of it. BLM got grants from the most mainstream corporations. They cashed in big time. So the left basically saw, we can do this and nothing's going to happen to us. For this reason, I think it's very important that these rioters and these vandals be held accountable and prosecuted. I think Pam Bondi is determined to do that. The reason Elon Musk is such a threat is he is going after the privileged lifestyle of the bureaucratic class. Now, these guys have set up a very elaborate system in which they loot the taxpayer, they loot the treasury, but they do it in the language of compassion. So, in other words, they act like they are doing good, but in fact, they are doing very well for themselves. And they have done this by setting up a very elaborate system of money that seemingly goes out of the government, but circles back into their back pockets through a network of NGOs.
Funny how that happens.
Right. I mean, there's no other explanation for how a politician making $150,000 a year can finish their careers and they've got $30 million. How is that
Hello,
possible?
Nancy Pelosi. Hello, Chuck Schumer. And the list goes on. Dinesh, something you've talked a lot about is DEI and its disastrous consequences, not only on American corporations, at our universities and beyond. Well, President Trump issuing executive orders to effectively end DEI in the federal government. How important is that?
I think the real power that is being exercised by Trump is not even so much the executive order. It is the literal strong arming of the universities.
Yeah.
So essentially, Trump is going in and saying, look, all of you guys, whether you're private or public, that distinction is not so important when it comes to federal aid because all of you are getting hundreds of millions of dollars from the taxpayer. Even the colleges that are lavishly endowed, even the colleges that have billion-dollar stashes of money are still cashing in on the taxpayer. And so Trump's point is, if you want the federal money, then you need to follow the letter of the law when it comes to the Civil Rights Act, which talks about non-discrimination. It doesn't say you can discriminate against whites and in favor of blacks. It doesn't talk about compensatory discrimination or benign discrimination. All discrimination is bad. It's not allowed. Number two, Title IX makes it very clear. You have sports for boys, you have sports for girls. There's no intermingling allowed. Boys can't play, and that's a violation of Title IX. So what Trump is doing is he's taking the manifest language of these statutes and laws and telling the universities, these are the 10 things you have to do if you want to keep getting federal money. Otherwise, we're going to hold it.
And it's just plain common sense. Again, a lot of it. Hey, switching gears a bit, You made a great film, vindicating Trump, just before the 2024 election. We talked about it here on Stakelbeck Tonight. Great film, a great film called 2,000 Mules as well. What are your thoughts in terms of the state of play right now when it comes to election integrity here in the United States?
I think that the great value of 2,000 Mules was that it busted a scheme that once it is publicly busted cannot be done again. Because if you send mules in the middle of the night to drop with backpacks full of ballots, wearing latex gloves, putting multiple ballots in a box and taking photos of those ballots going in, people are going to be looking for it.
And this happened in 2020, as you document in the film.
Yes, it happened in 2020, and we didn't see it in 2024, and the Patriots were looking for it, which is why I think the 2024 election was a more honest election than 2020. But that being said, there is a lot of dishonesty or vulnerability, maybe a kind of a softer term, in our system. We have voter rolls that are notoriously unreliable, which is to say there are all kinds of people on the rolls who shouldn't be there. Many Americans move. You get up and you leave Arizona and you go to Pittsburgh, let's say. Well, when you move, everybody knows you've moved, right? The DMV knows you moved, and the tax people know you've moved. And the only place where your name is not taken off a list and added to a list automatically is the voter rolls. You stay on the rolls. Nobody notifies those people. Nobody takes your name off. So
for hundreds of years, maybe.
And this has been going on for decades.
Yeah.
Yes. And then you have, dishonest voter rolls are the starting point of voter fraud. Of course, nothing is made easier with the mail-in drop boxes, because that's another opportunity for fraud, because when you mail out ballots, who knows who opens the envelope? Who knows who fills it out? In fact, even when you get a mail-in ballot back and you open the ballot and you take it out of the envelope, the signature, as it turns out, is not on the ballot. It's on the envelope. So once you've separated those two pieces, you cannot even go back and put them back together to see if this guy actually voted that ballot. So our system has a lot of holes in it. I think Trump is determined to fix them, but it's not going to be easy to fix, in part because the system of elections is run by the states.
Kudos to you, Dinesh, for shining a light on it. Without 2,000 Mules, I don't think we would have had the success we had in 2024 in terms of keeping them honest as much as we could, I guess you would say. The invasion at our southern border, over now, in a sense, since President Trump took office?
Trump has stopped it dead in its tracks. And yet, we have to say that there have been millions, some would say over 10 million, illegals now in the country as part of a systematic scheme. I can't even blame the illegals entirely, because essentially the Biden administration was waving them in. Something's got to be done about that.
Yeah. Dinesh, we talked a little bit about the domestic front earlier, foreign policy, and we've talked about President Trump smashing paradigms. What's your take so far on his approach to the world? I think of tariffs. You and I were discussing that off camera. And his approach generally, a return of peace through strength and putting America first, it seems.
Trump is rethinking the kind of world order as it's existed. And for Trump, I think his domestic vision and his international vision go together.
Yeah.
So I think he recognizes that over the past 30 years or so, we have had an economic system that, whatever its theoretical merits, has had the clear effect of taking our middle class and splitting it. Splitting it so that a third of it has moved into an affluent class and has become part of a global elite that has benefited enormously from free trade, outsourcing, technology. But the bulk of the middle class, I would say about 2/3 of it, has either stagnated or slumped down. And these are people who have paid the price of this globalization. And these are the Trump voters, as it turns out. So I think Trump's idea is, listen, I have to deliver for these people, because what kind of American dream is it where only one segment of the population gets to cheer loudly and break out the champagne every time they open up their returns, and everybody else is struggling even on two incomes to make ends meet and watching the value of their money go down and down? it's appalling, really. And so I think a lot of the shrieking about this is coming from the old winners who don't recognize what Trump is actually doing here.
Yeah, Dinesh, well said. He is certainly ahead of the curve, as are you. When you think of global threats right now, threatening the United States, China, Iran, pretty much at the top of the list, that Iranian axis, and of course, the communist regime in Beijing.
Yes, I think that Russia is not as big a threat as those two, China and Iran, for different reasons. The effect of the United States' policy in Ukraine, I think, regrettably, has been to push Russia toward China. It's the reverse of what Nixon tried to do. Nixon tried to leverage China against the Soviet Union, or against the old Russia, if you will. And what we should be doing now, I think, is somewhat of the opposite, which is to say, I mean, it's an old rule of politics, right? In other words, if the United States, for example, wants to protect its interests in Asia, find all the powerful countries in Asia around China and make sure that you have good alliances with them, Japan, Korea, India, for example. And so, but the United States has had, I think, for the last couple of decades, a very ideological approach to foreign policy, whereas the Chinese have had you could call it a businessman or transactional approach. Like, what can I do for you, and you have got to do something for me in return. And the truth of it is, most of the world understands that language much better than they understand the wagging finger. Yeah. You need to be better at your democracy, coming from a country that in some ways is undermining democracy even at home.
Yeah, a very good point. And Trump is more in that transactional mold, which I think is a very good thing for us right now.
And I think is a language that even the Chinese would understand.
Yeah.
Because the way that Trump deals with the Chinese is not going to be, you're my enemy and everything you're for, I'm against. It's, we can find common ground, but let's remember, you look out for your interests and I'll be looking out for ours. And we deal with each other on that basis. What can you offer me?
He's got leverage and he's not afraid to use it. Imagine that. Actually, strong leadership, leverage, peace through strength. Hey, last question. Are you optimistic about what you see in America right now? Obviously, the goal is a national revival. We're a lot closer to that now that President Trump's back in office. Are you optimistic about the way things are trending after, obviously, a low point the last 4 years for America? Do you think we're heading in the right direction? A lot of work to be done. Of course, it's not going to be easy. But are you generally saying, okay, this thing's heading now back in the right direction now that President Trump's back in office?
The right direction, to be sure. When the election occurred, my initial feeling was not even exhilaration, but almost relief. It was that we were careening toward the precipice and we averted it, right? It's almost like, I almost felt like the country had been through an exorcism, you know? But what I didn't anticipate was this kind of Trump blitzkrieg, which I think has been at a more rapid pace, very effective. Trump is, of course, a world-class troller of the left. And so it's been exhilarating and entertaining and fun to watch. I think there's a long way to go to put the country back on track, but at least I think we are on the right track.
Yeah, and Donald Trump is a man with a sense of urgency. I think he knows the severity, the urgency. He's got 4 years to do it, so it's a breakneck pace. It's amazing to see. Dinesh, great job as always, my friend. Hey, follow Dinesh on X, across social media. Check out his great films and his books. Dinesh, thanks again, my friend.
It's a real pleasure. Thanks for having me.